Hey y'all, it's Alex and welcome back to my channel. Over here we have day 24, the prompt word was dizzy, and you can check out that video in the top right corner. Today's color is Ecolines 548, which is blue-violet. And funny enough, I think yesterday's color is more of a blue-violet than today's color, but that's kind of besides the point. The original thumbnail I made for today was a callback to one of the cats that I designed on day 18, and they were going to be stealing food off of their owner's plate, but I just didn't really feel like drawing a cat today. I very much wanted to draw one of my Piercelings. The first thumbnail I came up with was kind of like some Piercelings are about to devour someone, however I wanted to do something a little bit more lighthearted. The idea I had planned for the next day was going to be a lot darker, so I wanted to have like the calm before the storm. So spoiler alert, tomorrow's gonna be freaky. So I decided on a witch feeding a couple of Piercelings. And I didn't know exactly what type of character to do, so I decided to pull out my random selection cards. And I decided to pick the gender, hairstyle, and top, since I didn't really plan on anywhere below the waist be in the image. So when I first drew options, the gender I received was girl. And honestly, I feel like that's what I grab about maybe 60% of the time. It's kind of annoying, but I just kind of stuck with it. And the first hair that I picked out was space buns. And as you can kind of see in the top left of this frame, I've already gotten space buns before once for video, which was actually the first video where I did this randomly selected character design. And I've actually gotten it twice again after that. And for the shirt, I got none. And we're not doing any nudity on this channel. I'm not brave enough for that yet. So I picked out a new shirt type. And I also picked out a new hairstyle because I'm kind of sick of it choosing space buns for me. I swear, I grab it every time. So instead of the space buns, we've got victory rolls. And instead of no shirt whatsoever, we have a fancy button-up, which I could totally get behind. So when working on a character with victory rolls, you'd imagine that you'd probably stick within, I'm pretty sure that's late 40s, early 50s hair. I'd have to probably look that up and I'll probably put it on screen, like the general era of the victory roll. But when I had fancy button-up shirt, I don't personally like a lot of 40s, 50s blouse designs. The big collar that I usually think of isn't very fancy, so I took it a different direction. I kind of started with a nice big cravat. That's kind of like the first thing I think of when I think of fancy button-up shirts. And I don't know why I kind of have been starting to do this. I just start drawing the hand in a random spot and it's like floating out in midair. It's not the best way to start your poses and I don't recommend it. That aside, I decided that for this character who I've named Theodora, she's a Victorian woman. She is currently wearing a Victorian walking skirt and blouse combo, which I will link my inspiration image here. I've been wanting to get back into drawing some decades vintage inspired outfits. There was a plan that I had a while ago to do an entire series of them, and I've only done one video for one so far. And I'm thinking I'm going to kind of start over and go a little bit further back because I believe I started in 1870 and there's some cool fashions in like the 1850s that I've missed a little bit, so I might take it back a little further. However, the walking skirt and blouse combo is kind of like my favorite vintage silhouette, just because the A-line skirt is so sleek looking. So I decided that Theodora is she's for sure an enchantress, given the fact that she has all of her Piercelings around her, which, for those who don't know, Piercelings are kind of a mythical creature I created about mid-2017, and they've been featured in one other piece in this series so far. I think it was day 7, which was Enchanted. And they're kind of like golems that witches can create and enchant from. I don't know exactly what they're made of. However, something I've decided for a while now is the slit down their face isn't actually an eye. That's actually their mouth. And it kind of like tears apart for them to be able to consume things. They're kind of freaky. I don't know how it would work in reality, but anyways, so Theodora and her piercelings are out for a picnic, and she has these sort of plum things that she has a big pile of in her hands, and the piercelings are able to pick them up through some sort of magical means to eat them. And of course, as soon as I got into the line art phase, my camera decided to slope slowly down, and we missed the entire top section of lining in the victory rolls. Of course we did. Now you might be wondering, so victory rolls are from the 40s, 50s. Victorian walking skirts, Victorian era is like 1830s to early 1900s, so how do we get there? I was kind of thinking about a reason for that as I was working on the line art. Perhaps Theodora is also a divination witch. Perhaps she's actually a time traveler. Perhaps someone she knows is a time traveler, and she happened to see this sort of hairstyle and decided that she would like to wear it as well. And she kind of put a Victorian twist on it by having the netting in the back underneath of the hairband. I'd considered having a long train of hair flowing down her back. However, I wanted her to kind of look a little bit more put together because I didn't want her to look too youthful. So I decided instead to put a hairnet along the back. And if I have any images on the screen, I will link to original sources down below if I can find them. I've been stuck in a loop of link to Pinterest, links back to Google, and it doesn't really turn up very many good sources. So if I know for one I have the source, but for the other I might not. Now the one thing that enrages me so much about how I designed piercelings is they're really hard to draw freehand and not make them look all wonky. It's kind of why I do a lot of piercelings in different perspectives, like with their arms in different orientations to the viewer. It's just a lot easier to foreshorten them instead of having like perfectly pin straight arms. And also why I cut some off of some piercelings, which for the large pierceling that it was made with all of these scratches, though I don't think that's very likely. It could also be her main protector pierceling. We don't know. And honestly, I kind of want to leave that one as a blank. When it came to the background, I wanted to put them in mostly grass. I wanted them to kind of be like in a park area, but we do have that hint of thicker woods further along to the left that are kind of like separated by a hedge. And at the top background, I didn't know, I know I wanted to have a pond up there. However, I didn't know if I wanted to have you see the other side of it. I decided that I wanted to just have it pool off the edge of the paper. And I think that is kind of like the weakest part of this entire piece. When I get to coloring in the water of it, I tried replicating the same washing technique that I did on day one and lost the footage of, so the process wasn't recorded, of course. Whatever I did in that video was magic. I'm flabbergasted that it actually worked, and it did not work for me today. The water is probably the weakest part of this piece. I couldn't get the amount of white spots that I wanted because I had to go in around the weird serpent monster and the two waterfowl that I put up there. And then, spoiler alert for later, but I try going in with a white pen to give the highlights of sunlight bouncing off the water, and it just doesn't work. So the water is kind of a loss. I also wanted to make sure that this piece had, again, primarily the gray tones. I tried doing that yesterday, but I still ended up with a lot of the purplish blue color, the ultramarine purple, I think. Ultraviolet? I honestly don't remember what it's called, and I'm not going to look at that watercolor because I still don't like it very much. The one thing I thank myself most for when designing piercelings is the fact that I made them pure white, because I can do a lot of dark backgrounds around them, which I prefer doing dark backgrounds. So having them be entirely white entities allows for them to be in a lot different locations. Now for the outfit, I wanted her to be in a white blouse, a light colored belt area to the skirt, and then a really dark skirt, because that's usually the setup I see for walking skirts whenever I see them. However, when I was designing the front of her blouse, I was reminded of this image that I found on Pinterest a few days ago. I'm pretty sure I found it on Pinterest. I was looking up fashion stuff for a different piece that I was trying to work on, but it's kind of like this, I wouldn't call it a cummerbund, but you kind of put it over top of a blouse. So I decided to replicate that in her outfit. So it's kind of like there's a secondary piece of fabric over top of her blouse to kind of protect the front of it. And I wanted to make sure that the blouse had a lot of shading in it, because it's supposed to be a pretty ruched fabric. And since I went in with the number 6 wash on the skirt, I tried using number 6 wash to be able to get the slight definition of the pleats. That didn't work out very well. I'll fix that later. Most of the bottom of the piece is this blanket laid out on the grass. I decided to go in with a really light wash just to be able to differentiate it a little bit. Now getting into this watercolor, this is probably one of my favorite tones in the Ecoline line. It's called Blue Violet, but I think it's actually it's redder toned than a lot of my other purples that I have. And it goes on pretty dark with only just one layer, like not putting too much on. Putting it over top of the dark washes that I put in some places gave me a really nice kind of like wine red color, which don't know exactly how that color mixing works, but that's at least what it looked like in person. So that worked out pretty well for the wine bottle that's inside of the picnic basket. I went along the edge of the picnic blanket with these small decorative lines. I horribly failed at making those lines even. I only showed on video the one side of me lining the picnic blanket. When you guys see the full pulled out version, it's bad. And once I kind of finished doing most of the purple in the background, I decided that Theodora needed a little bit more purple to her outfit as well. So I decided to put a purple wash over her blouse and also on the belt. And to redefine the pleats in the walking skirt, I went in with a white pen just to go over the two lines. However, I decided those were too stark, so I went over them with a little bit of ink wash. Most white pens, like the Sakura Jelly Roll, are water soluble, so you do pull up a little bit of the white. However, if you go light enough with the ink wash, like dry enough with the ink wash, you manage not to wash it all away. And you can see my failed attempt at using the Molotow marker to highlight the water up there, and that didn't cover over with ink wash. It just kind of repelled it. And as soon as I started taking the final shots, I realized I didn't give Theodora eye shines, and I've also been wanting to do more highlights in the hair, so I added those in real quick. Thank you guys so much for watching. Tomorrow's prompt word is dark, and we'll be using the last Bombay indie ink of this entire series. I'm very excited for that. If you feel so inclined, hit that subscribe button and check me out on my other social media handles. Thanks, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.